Hi, it's Helen Tarrant. Welcome to another episode of Commercial Property Roadshow. In this episode, I'm going to share with you how to read an information memorandum. Now, this is the number one step of getting into commercial property. So this is the beginner's guide of getting into commercial property. If you're looking at commercial property, you might have scrolled online on real commercial real estate, or you might have gone to some agent's website and actually found some more information on commercial property. But the next step, what do you do? So normally we request some information, but what's information? In commercial property, this is what we call an information memorandum. So this is a document, usually somewhere between 10 pages to anywhere from 20, 30 pages, depending on how large the property is, and it tells you the basic information about the property. So let's go through one, and so I can show you in detail what it looks like, what are some of the questions I'm going to ask follow up from this, and how this is going to help you to narrow down your search and finding a commercial property. So this property is a property on 8 Bayless Street in Wagga Wagga. Wagga Wagga is a regional town about 5.5 hours drive from Sydney, on its way to Melbourne, and it's got a large population. It's got multiple drivers there. It's got military, education, it's got healthcare. It is quite a big hub. So it's got about I think almost 50,000 people there. And this is a job centre, so they're actually an employment centre that is located in the main street of Wagga. So this is an information memorandum, and this has obviously got the agent's details for traffic commercial. It gives you the summary of the property. So it gives you the lot number, the deposit plan. So if you did want to pull up title searches, you can definitely do that if you wanted to. It talks about the land size of the property and also the floor area. So that's your net lettable area. So how many times you talk about how much the net lettable area is and what is the rate per square meter. So let's say if the rate was $150 a square meter, then you'll times that by 269 square meters. It's zoned B3 commercial core, so it's main hub commercial, so it can be used for a lot of users. And if you want to find out what B3 means, you can go up to the Wagga Council website and look it up, and it'll give you a list of approved users, so you know in the future what kind of tenants you could have in there as well. The tenant pays a gross income. So the gross income of this property is $92,000. So when it talks about gross income, we're talking about the tenant actually are not paying any outgoings, which means that you are responsible as the landlord to pay all of the outgoings. But of course, the tenant paying GST on top of that as well. There's the listing price, so that's the asking price for the property. And the reason they put before GST is if a property is tenanted in commercial, it's not subject to GST because it's a going concern. But if you decide that you want the property to be vacant, and in certain circumstances you might find a tenanted property and ask them to be vacant, and then a GST is applicable. And the sales method. So the sales method can be auction, it can be private treaty, which means private negotiation, or it can be a EOI, which is an expression of interest. So there could be multiple parties in there as well. So that's how you would go through the information memorandum to try to understand what's going through that, so you understand the basic elements of the property. Now this property talks about the location. So the location of the property is in Bayless Street on the western side in a high traffic area. So if you look on Google Maps, you can find out where Bayless Street is on the western side of the actual property. And so if you want to Google this area and you're looking at where it is located, it's always worthwhile to go and to Google to see what other properties are located in the location surrounding this property. So you might find like tenants or also office tenants, you might find retail tenants, you might find other government tenants in there as well. So there's a lot of information that Google Maps can offer you, but by giving you sort of the zoning, you can sort of also see what's around as well. It actually tells you a little bit about the business, what's around there. There's the Anytime Fitness, Domino's Pizza, and as we go through, it talks about improvements. So that's about the property itself. So it's substantially rebuilt and refurbished to a high standard. So this property was rebuilt in 1995. So it's had a good tenant history of government tenancy up until now. with this one starting in 2018. Now, if it's refurbished in 1995, one of the things you've got to think about is this property. They probably don't have any asbestos because it might have been fully refurbished. All of that has been removed, possibly new fit out, possibly some structural stuff that's been done. But it's important that now we start to ask some follow-up questions like what kind of refurbishment was done on the property in 95? Is there any asbestos in the property? What's the in the history, has it always been government tenants or has it been used for anything else? So it talks about the floor area being 279 square meters. It's got a window display, so we know that it's a retail shop front. So in the future, it can always be used as retail. Suspended ceilings, reception area. So this, when I look at that, I would be asking for a floor plan. Maybe later on in the actual memorandum that will show you the floor plan, but I will probably be asking for a floor plan and working out if what it looks like internally with this property, and it's been finished with a high quality standard of office. So I would like some photos. I'm sure they'll show you some photos in the information memorandum, but I'd like some more photos or videos. I'll probably request more of that when I speak to the agent. Now it gives you a location shot and it shows you where all the other property is as well. And then now we go through, we see the tenancy schedule. Job Centre Australia Limited, we know that if it's limited, it's a national company. So it's pretty secure like that. It's got a lease of 3 years by 1 times 2 year option. So it's 3 years by 2 year option. Look, that's a short lease in terms of government lease, but it could be a reason for that. So we need to find out the reason for that. So the reason they give you these information is that you can have follow up and you can have these information about, you can ask more information about the tenant. So if the tenant's a national tenant, then why are they only on a 3 by a 2 year option? It could be because of their funding, but we want to find out a little bit more. We'll look at the current rent and we want to find out if that's actually market rent. We want to compare that. So one of the ways we could do that is get 92,248 and divide that by the square meterage, about 279. So if we work that out, 92,248 divided by 279 work out about $330 per square meter. Now we can compare that with what's available for lease in the lease section of these online websites. We can look at surrounding areas like next door or say Rebel Sport, what are they renting out for, so we can get a gauge of it. The commencement of the lease is 1st of May, so we know that in May 2021 the property will come up for renewal and whether the tenant will take up the 2 year option or not. And it's got a CPI rent request increase, so it means that each year consumer price index kicks in. And they normally use the local one. So if this is in New South Wales, they'll use Sydney. So local CPI for that. And now we talk about the outgoings. So because this is a gross lease, you as the landlord actually pays the outgoings. So that means that the council rates are $6,852. The per annum of the water rates and sewerage adds up to about $700 or so. Now you can verify this, and certainly I will by following up by asking for rates notices, water notices, and sewerage notices. They should come together. The other thing or outgoings that I see that's not there that should be listed is insurance, as you are the landlord, and if it's a gross lease, you will be responsible for paying insurance on that building. So I'll be asking for insurance, how much that would be. But I also would check the lease to make sure the tenant is not covering that insurance, even though it's a gross lease. Now, the next section talks about tenant, which is what Job Centre is, not-for-profit organisation, providing service of disability. They've been government funded for the last 27 years. Now, that shows a good history, and most likely that funding is going to keep going. And they give you a website. I'll certainly be looking up the website to see where else they're located as well. Now I look at the zoning, talks about B3 core zoning. It looks like that whole area covered in blue is B3. Again, I'll go on the council website and check what kind of occupation that allows for, so I know in the future if I had a change of tenancy what that would be. But here luckily they've already provided that objective of the zoning, what it does, office, retail, public transport. Talks about permitted use without consent, permitted use with consent, so you can do childcare centres, community facilities, which is what essentially this is, education establishment, it could be a training organisation, function centres, so all of that with consent, which means that you have to apply to the council to get consent. And here talks about what's prohibited. It's worthwhile to look at that if you need to re-tenant the property. You won't be going through, you won't be able to have one of those tenants, but most of that's related to industrial and mining and travel, which is not applicable to your retail and office space anyway. So here, next page, we've got some photos of what the job centre looks like internally. Pretty standard office. Doesn't seem to be any major issues. I would certainly like, personally, if I wasn't going to go and visit it, a video of the premise, and mostly the agents are happy to look at that. They've also given you a bit of a floor plan, which shows you where the property is, but I really would like to see an internal floor plan of where each of the office spaces are. And also there is, it looks like they've got rear lane access, so I want to confirm to see if they've got rear lane access as well and stuff. Here's some more information. Now we get towards the end of it. It talks about the city of Wagga, demographics, population. So if you want to do additional research, by all means, I will get on Google, look at key drivers. I'll be searching key drivers for Wagga, some of the major infrastructure projects coming into Wagga. I look at the demographics, I look at the actual income, I look at sort of the population growth in the next few years to see, and I also look at the major areas and what brings in more people. And obviously here we can see that we've got the projected forecast going from 67,000 people to 80,000 people. So there's a lot more people coming into the area as well. So education, we talk about retail, we talk about tourism as well, because of course they've got a military base, so we've got families, of course, visiting there as well. So more information always. I will look up more information, get comfortable with the area if I don't know, if I'm going through the research phase, whether this property makes it onto my shortlist. It's I like to see the location. It says it's fully leased located entrance to the Wagga retail strip. I like to have a look what that is. I want to be not too far removed from the retail strip in case in the future I want to retain it with a retail or a food tenant. Now it's asking private treaty $1,095,000. Now before I can go back and realise what exactly the property is, I need to get to the net rent. Remember, all commercial properties done under net yield, which is, this tenant's paying $92,000 or so in gross rent. We need to take out all of the outgoings. And so far, what they've given us is the outgoings for water and sewerage and rates, which a bit over $6,000. It adds up to probably around $7,500 at the moment, but we don't add insurance. If we add, say, $2,500 insurance, that's $10,000. Insurance could be higher than that, so maybe sitting around $82,000, but let's call that $80,000. So at a guesstimate, if we were looking at what $80,000 would be, divide that by $1,095,000, I would say this property is sitting currently at about 7.3% yield for Wagga. For me, that's a little bit light. You, through your research and what you need to achieve, you have to decide if that works for you. But for me, it's a little bit light. I would like to push that to an 8. So I would work out an 8% of that. If it's $80,000 net, of course, I'll be asking the agent to show me some documents before I get out to the net figure. For me, the property will be probably sitting somewhere around $1 million in terms. So incidentally, this property's went for just over $1 million, so it was close to that 8% yield on that property. So again, when you're looking at information memorandums, the important thing is to write down your follow-up questions, look at what they're not telling you. It gives you a brief overview of what the property is, but the most important thing is to have follow-up questions and understand if a property like this will make it up to the shortlist. And you make it onto the shortlist by a few things. Firstly, the type of tenant it is, the length of lease, and also the yield ultimately this property is going to go for that matches your financial freedom goals and financial freedom planning. So remember, with every commercial property there's got to be a strategy behind it, and therefore when you're looking at the property, look at it from the point of view is how does this fit in my long-term strategy, and what does my long-term plan of this property, is it a hold, is it a hold for the moment and sell later on, or is this a buy, increase the value and flip, or is this buy under market? There's so many different strategies for commercial property. If you want more help and more tips, don't forget to subscribe. I've got an ebook as well you can download. Go to helentarrant.com, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Bye for now.